Manly Palmer Hall, The Lost Keys of Freemasonry, or The Secret of Hiram Abiff. The Lion's Claw in the Mysteries of the Pyramid. The image shows how the lion's claw was grasped in the Pyramid of Mysteries. The priest wore a lion mask on his head. Through this grasp, the spirit in man, long buried in the tomb of matter, is raised to life, and the candidate emerges as a builder entitled to the wages of an initiate. Introduction. Freemasonry, while not a religion in itself, is essentially religious. Many of its legends and allegories have sacred origins. Much of its content is embedded within the structure of Christianity. We have become accustomed to considering our own religion as perhaps the only truly inspired one, and this is probably the source of many of the misunderstandings in the modern world regarding the place of Freemasonry in contemporary moral practices. A religion is a moral code of higher inspiration. A religious person is anyone who draws inspiration from this code to live more nobly. They thus identify with the essence of that code, which constitutes the source of their enlightenment. Therefore, we can say that a Christian is one who derives their spiritual ideals, true or false according to their interpretation, from the message of Christ, while a Buddhist is one who shapes their life according to the archetype of morality given by the great Gautama, or one of the other Buddhas. All doctrines that seek to reveal and preserve that invisible spark within humanity called spirit can rightly be considered spiritualist. Those who ignore this invisible element and limit themselves entirely to the visible are called materialists. In religious matters, there is an admirable point of equilibrium where spiritualists and materialists meet on a plane of logic and reason. Science and theology are two ends of a single truth, but the world will never fully benefit from their investigations until both make peace and work side by side for the accomplishment of the great task: the liberation of the spirit and intelligence from the clutches of that three-dimensional prison that is ignorance, fear, and superstition. Everything that serves to give man self-knowledge can only be inspired by the self, and God is the absolute self. He is, in truth, both the inspiration and the inspired. Scripture says that God is the Word, and that the Word became flesh. Man's task today is to make his flesh reflect the glory of that Word which dwells within his soul. This task is what has given rise to the need for religion, not to a single faith, but to various creeds, each of which strives, by its own means, to discover the needs of humankind, emphasizing one aspect above the others. There are 12 members of the Guild exploring the 4 cardinal points. Are these not, perhaps, the 12 religions of the world, each seeking its own path, lost in the mists of time, yet whose pursuit is an inherent right of humankind? Is not the pursuit of reality, in a world of illusions, what characterizes the task we are engaged in life? We have come here to establish balance in a sphere of imbalance, to find rest in the midst of a world that never rests, to unveil the illusion and subdue the dragon of our own instinctive nature. Just as David, king of Israel, entrusted to his son Solomon the task he could not accomplish, so each generation entrusts to the next the task of building the temple, or, better yet, of rebuilding the dwelling place of the Lord, which stands upon Mount Moriah. The truth is not entirely lost. We must continue searching until we find it. Reality always emerges before us, overwhelmingly prevailing over everything else. Man, a creature made of actions and desires, subject to his own opinions and impressions, under the complicated vacillations of all free intelligence, cannot come to know what he himself does not possess. As a man, he receives the benefit of a quality, discovers that quality, and recognizes, concerning himself, the thing that is reborn within him. Man is born with eyes, but only after long years of suffering does he learn to see clearly and in accordance with the plan. He is born with his senses, but only after long experiences and fruitful efforts does he manage to temper those senses to offer them as tribute on the altar of the Great Father, creator of all that is perfect and who understands all. Man, in reality, is born in ignorance and error, but, at the same time, he has received the capacity to understand. He has a mind capable of acquiring wisdom, a heart capable of harboring feelings, and a strong hand for life's great task, turning the rough block into a perfect stone. What more can a creature ask for than the opportunity to fulfill its destiny, the dream that inspires it, the vision that guides it? We have no right to demand wisdom. To whom can we implore understanding? By what authority can we demand happiness? None of this is part of the natural right of creatures, yet all can obtain it if they cultivate within themselves what they yearn for. There is no need to implore, nor is there any deity who will descend from its throne to give humankind what it desires. Humankind has received its gifts from nature. It has received a singular gift, which consists of the privilege of work. Through work, it will learn all things and the reason for its destiny. Religions are groups of people, all gathered together for the purpose of learning. The world is a school. We are here to learn as well. Our very presence demonstrates our need for instruction. Every living creature struggles to break the chains of limitation, that oppressive narrowness that reduces the possibility of seeing and understanding, and strips life of all its ideals. Every soul is, in fact, engaged in a great task, to liberate itself from the state of ignorance. The world is a limited enclosure, an enormous prison, whose bars are constituted by the unknown. Every living being is a prisoner until, having won the right to tear those bars from their tight bolts, it passes, illuminated and inspired, from the shadow that becomes light in its presence. All seek the temple where God dwells, where the Spirit of the great truth illuminates the darkness of human ignorance, but they do not know where to go or where to find their temple. The fog of dogma surrounds them, periods of passive thought bind them, limitation weakens them and slows their progress. He wanders through the darkness, searching for the light he longs for, until he finally realizes that this light lies in the darkness of his own heart. God reveals himself only to the few who manage to find him. In turn, these reveal him to others, striving to instill this message of wisdom in the ignorant. But rarely do people manage to grasp the mystery that has been revealed to them. Timidly they try to follow in the footsteps of those who have succeeded, but all too often, most find the path too arduous. Then they fall to their knees, praying before the mountain they are unable to climb, on whose summit shines the light they are not yet able to reach, for lack of the necessary strength, nor to understand, for lack of sufficient sagacity. They live by the law as they find it, always fearful that they have not correctly interpreted the fiery pronouncements of the heavens, and have given validity to the letter of the law, which kills their spirit. Humankind humbly bows before the unknown, and populates the darkness of its ignorance with saints and saviors, phantoms and specters, gods and demons. Ignorance is always afraid of everything, and falls, filled with terror, even before the passing wind. Superstition is like the monument of ignorance. Before it kneels all who realize their own weakness, all who see in everything a power they do not possess, all who transform the beauties of nature into the dwelling place of ogres and monsters. Wisdom fears nothing, yet it humbly reveres its own source. While superstition readily hates, wisdom, through its deeper understanding, loves all things, because it has been able to discover the beauty, the tenderness, and the grace of all that lies beneath the mystery of life. Life is a predetermined span of time meant for accomplishment. Every fleeting moment is an opportunity, and all great people are those who recognize life as an opportunity for all things. Arts, sciences, and religions are monuments that bear witness to all that humanity has already achieved. They stand as reminders of humankind's ever-flowing intelligence, and through them, humanity acquires more effective and intelligent methods for achieving its goals. Blessed are those who can build upon the experiences of others, those who, by building upon what has already been accomplished, can transform their inspiration into reality and their dreams into practice. All those who give humanity what it needs, even if they are little recognized in their own time, are later venerated as saviors of the human race. Freemasonry is a body built by experience. Each stone is a further step in the evolution of intelligence. The altars of Freemasonry are adorned with jewels thousands of years old. Its rituals resonate with words from illustrious prophets and enlightened sages. Countless religions have contributed their gifts of wisdom to its altar. Numerous arts and sciences have enriched its symbolism. It is more than a faith. It is a path to certainty. It is more than a belief. It is a fact. Freemasonry is a university where the liberal arts and the sciences of the soul are taught to all who listen and interpret its veiled teachings. It is a shadow of the great Atlantean school of mysteries, which existed in splendor in the ancient city of the Golden Gates, now covered by the turbulent waters of the Atlantic. Its lecture halls are seats of wisdom. Its columns support the arch of universal education, not only in material matters, but also in the qualities that constitute the spirit. Inscribed on its tablets are the sacred truths of all religions and all peoples, and those who understand them can experience, thanks to the transcendence of its teachings, the great reality. Freemasonry is, in truth, that which long lost has tormented humankind throughout the ages in its pursuit. Freemasonry is the common denominator, and also the common denominator of human aspiration. The analogy for most of the religions the world has known is a procession. One leads, and the others follow. At the feet of the demigods, humanity continues its search for truth and light. The Christian follows the gentle Nazarene to the stormy peaks of Calvary. The Buddhist follows their great liberator through their wanderings in the jungle. The Muslim makes their pilgrimage across the sandy desert to the black tent of Mecca. Truth leads, and ignorance follows. Spirit illuminates the path, and matter trails behind. In the world, ideals live only a moment in their purity, then the chosen guests of darkness extinguish the dazzling pyre. The mystery school, however, remains unmoved. It does not bring its light to humanity. Humanity must bring its light to it. Ideals, when they take root in the world, become idols within a few hours, but the man who crosses the threshold of the sanctuary transforms the idol back into an ideal. The man ascends an endless staircase, his eyes fixed on the goal at the top. Many can only see it 1 or 2 steps above. The man, however, has learned a great lesson. He alone is He is the architect of his own character, and thus he has acquired the strength and courage to ascend the ladder. Therefore, the Mason is the builder of the temple of his personality. He is the architect of a sublime mystery, the luminous and radiant temple of his soul. He understands that he best serves God when he unites with the great architect to build ever nobler structures in the world he inhabits. All who strive to attain mastery through constructive efforts are Freemasons at heart, regardless of their religious sect or belief. One is not a Mason simply by belonging to a lodge. In a broader sense, a Mason is anyone who daily strives to live a life of constant perfection and to serve the needs of the great architect with intelligence and harmony. The Mason brother voluntarily undertakes to help every seeker of truth at any level and circumstance, and in doing so, he commits himself to all living things, for they are builders of temples, striving to erect noble buildings for the glory of the universal God. The true Masonic Lodge is a mystery school, a place where candidates are removed from the follies and frivolities of the world and instructed in the mysteries of life and death, in the fraternal relationships of selflessness and harmony, and in the identity of that seed of spiritual essence of which they are a part and therefore children of God, beloved by their Father. The Mason takes life seriously, realizing that every wasted moment is a lost opportunity, and that gradual omnipotence is attained only through discipline and dedication. Above all other relationships, he recognizes the universal brotherhood of all living things. The meaning of the handshake, explained in Lodge, reflects his attitude toward everyone, for he is a companion of all created things. He also realizes that his spirit is a dazzling jewel that he must polish in the sacred temple with the work of his hands, the aspiration of his heart, and the meditation of his mind. Freemasonry is essentially a philosophy without dogma. That is why it is truer. Its members bow before the truth, without regard for who brings it. They serve the light, rather than worrying about the one who carries it. Along their path, they prove that they are striving to better understand the will and the dictates of the Creator. There is no truer religion than this one of worldwide camaraderie, brotherhood, solidarity, and unity, in the purpose of glorifying a universal God and building for Him a temple of constructive attitude and noble character in the very heart of each of its members. Chaos in the fields. The first glimmers of nascent life pierce the impenetrable expanse of cosmic night, transforming the darkness of negation into the hazy twilight of being. Silhouetted against the shadows of eternity's gates, on the nebulous shores of turbulent matter, stood the solitary figure of a strange mystic. Shrouded in a chimerical blue mantle of mystery, his head crowned with a golden halo of dazzling light. The darkness of chaos fled before the rays that gushed forth, like torrents of living fire, from that divine form. From some cosmos, immeasurably greater than our own, had come that mystic visitor, answering the call of divinity. He leaped from star to star, and was known from the world to the universe, despite having remained shrouded in the membranous wings of the night of chaos. Suddenly the clouds parted, and a wondrous light descended from some region situated between the seething waves of force, and it covered that solitary form with its celestial radiance, in which every sparkling molecule of mist shone like a diamond bathed in the living fire of the divine. In the sparkling flame of cosmic light, confined by the dark clouds of non-being, two great forms appeared, and a mighty voice came radiating eternity. Every bubbling atom vibrated with the power of the Creator's word, while the immense figure in a blue robe bowed reverently before the pedestal of his Maker, as an elongated hand from the sky extended its fingers imparting its blessing. Among all creation, I have chosen you, and upon you I have raised my throne. You are the instrument chosen by my hand, and I charge you to be the builder of my temple. You will raise its pillars and cover its floor. You will adorn it with metals and jewels, and you will be the master of my workers. In your hands I place the plans, and here in the command post of living substance, I leave engraved the plan that you must follow, and on which I have traced every letter and every angle with the shining lines of my omnipotent finger. Hiram Abiff, chosen as builder of your father's house, arise and begin your task. There are the dense clouds, the grey mists, the glimmers of heavenly light, and the darkness of creation's sleep. With them you will build, without the sound of my hammer or the cries of laborers, the temple of your eternal God who is in the heavens. The swirling, ceaseless action of negation will compel you to grind and polish your stones. Among those spirits of non-being you will have to mix the lime and lay your foundations, for I have been watching you from the days of your youth, and have guided you through the days of your adulthood. I have weighed you in the balances, and have seen that you are righteous. Therefore, I grant you the glory of labor, and I hereby bestow upon you the commission as builder of my house. To you I give the word of master builder. To you I give the tools of the trade. I am passing on to you the power with which I have been invested. Have faith in these things. Return them to me when you have finished, and I will give you the name known only to God. So it must be. The great light was extinguished in the heavens. The flaming fingers of the light of life vanished into the nebulous and solitary dawn, and once again a black shroud enveloped non-being. Hiram Abiff was alone again, gazing into the infinite ocean of oblivion, a sea of swirling, seething matter to an endless horizon. Then, taking in his hands all that had been given to him and engraving upon his heart the radiant word of the Master, he walked slowly until he was swallowed by the mists of primordial night. How many men can measure endless eternity? The ages passed, and the solitary builder worked out his plans with only love and humility in his heart. His hand molded the darkness that he blessed, while his eyes were lifted to the point from which the great light descended from the heavens. He worked in divine solitude, with no one to encourage or censure him, alone, in utter freedom, with the icy morning mist upon his brow, but with his heart still comforted by the word of the Master. His seemed a hopeless task. No single hands could have molded the darkness. No heart, however truthful, could be great enough to project the pulsating cosmic love upon the cold mists of oblivion. Though the darkness closed ever closer upon him, and the gripping fingers of denial tightened around his being, the builder, provided with divine truth, continued to work. Filled with divine hope, he laid its foundations, and with his inexhaustible clay he forged the molds to give shape to his sacred ornaments. Slowly the building grew, and the hesitant figures molded by the Master's hand began to stand out. The Master had forged 3 enormous, yet soulless creatures, immense beings that appeared like grim specters in the gloom. They were 3 builders whom he had blessed, and now they passed insolently before him. Hiram stretched out his arms toward his creation, saying, "Brothers, I have forged you to accomplish your work. I have formed you to work with me in the construction of the house of the Lord. You are children of my own being. I have worked for you, now work with me for the glory of God." But the specters burst into laughter. They transformed into their creator and attacked him with his own tools, those God had placed in his hands from the heavens, and they left their great Master dying amidst his works, wounded and annihilated by the threefold power of the cosmic night. Bleeding, lying at the foot of his creation, the martyred builder raised his head to the swirling clouds, his face radiant with sweetness, divine love, and cosmic understanding, while his lips prayed to the Master who had sent him into the world. O Master of workers, great architect of the universe, my labors are not finished. Why must they always remain incomplete? I have not finished that for which you gave me being, for my own creation has turned against me, and the tools you gave me have brought me death. The children I created for love have murdered me because of their ignorance. Here, Father, is the word you gave me, now stained with my own blood. O Master, I return it to you because I have kept it as a sacred gift within my heart. Here are the tools, the board, and the artifacts I forged. Around me stand the ruins of the temple I must leave. To you, O God, divine knower of all, I return them, realizing that in your will lies the power to accomplish all things. You, O God, know all our actions, you know our thoughts. In your name, Father, I have labored, and for your sake, I die a loyal builder. The master collapsed, his face a gentle expression turned toward infinity in the final repose of death, and the luminous flashes that emanated from him ceased. The grey clouds grew denser, forming a weightless shroud around the body of the murdered Hiram. Suddenly the heavens opened again, and a stream of light bathed Hiram's figure in celestial glory. Once more the voice spoke from the heavens, where the great king has his throne among the clouds of creation. He is not dead, he is only asleep. Who will awaken him? His work is not finished, and in his death he guards the sacred relics more jealously than ever, because the word and the plans are his alone from the moment I gave them to him. But thus he will remain, asleep, until those three who murdered him bring him back to life. Every error must be rectified, and the plunderers of my house, the destroyers of my temple, must work as builders until they snatch the master from death. The three perpetrators fell to their knees and simultaneously raised their hands to the sky as if to deflect the light that had revealed their crime. O God, great is our sin. We have killed our great master Hiram. Your punishment is just, and since we murdered him, we must now dedicate our lives to his resurrection. The former is our human weakness, the latter our sacred duty. So be it, replied the voice from heaven. The great light vanished, and misty clouds of darkness enveloped the corpse of the murdered master, disappearing into the maelstrom of shadows, without leaving a mound or any trace to indicate where the builder's body lies. The three riotals, thought, desire, action, these three killers, perverted thinking, unbridled emotions, and destructive actions, kill the life spirit in man and bring down the ruined temple of creation upon their own heads. In the ancient mysteries, woman symbolizes man's emotional nature, typifying emotional excess as one of the killers of universal energy, the guardian of the threshold. Enlightened and sanctified by his work in fulfilling individual responsibility, the candidate sets out to master his lower nature, the beast that must never come between him and the altar of his God. Lessons in self-mastery are taught in all mystery schools. "O God!" cried the three conspirators. "And where can we find our master now?" From the invisible supreme realm descended once more a hand, wielding a fragile oil lamp, whose dying flame dimly illuminated the darkness. And at the same time they heard the sentence, "With this light, you will have to seek the one you have murdered." The three forms surrounded the light and bowed reverently in prayer, giving thanks for that brief glimmer that would illuminate the darkness of their path. From somewhere in the regions of non-being, the great voice spoke with echoes of thunder that shook chaos. He came like a flower and has been broken. He flew like an archangel, but his wings have been slashed. As waters merge into the sea and flowers wither and dry up, so is man in dying. I still pity the creatures of my creation. I guide them in times of trouble, and I save them with my inexhaustible power. Seek where a broken stem lies and a dry rod. Seek where clouds gather. Seek among the stones on the hillside, for all these point to the grave of Hiram, who has taken my will with him to the tomb. This eternal quest is yours until you find your builder, until the body yields its secret, until the grave dissolves the phantoms. I will speak no more until you have found and raised my beloved son, and you have listened to the words of my messenger, and with him as your guide, have completed the temple in which I will dwell. Amen. The grey dawn still lay sleeping in the arms of darkness. Outside the great mystery of non-being, all was silence, all unknowable. Through the misty dawn, like strange phantoms of a dream, three figures wandered across the great unknown realm, each carrying a faint light, the lamp given to them by the father of their builder. Across lands, seas, clouds, and stars, they wandered eternally in search of the silent tomb, pausing again and again to explore the depths of mystical caverns, praying to be released from their endless quest, ever bound by their vows to resurrect the builder they had slain, whose tomb is marked with a broken stalk, and whose body was snatched away by the white stormy shroud of death, to some place atop the eternal hill. Temple builders, you are the builders of the temple of the future. With your own hands you must raise the domes and capitals of a new civilization. Upon the foundations you have laid, tomorrow you will build a far nobler edifice. Builders of the temple of character, in which an enlightened spirit is to reside, true forgers of the rock of knowledge, shapers of the vessels created to hold the elixir of life, rise up, and to the task that awaits you. Never before in the history of humankind have you had the opportunity that now lies before you. The world waits for the enlightened one who is to appear from between the pillars of the portico. Humility, blindfolded but resolute, tries to enter the temple of wisdom. Open the door wide, and let him who is worthy enter. Open the door wide, and let the light that is the life of humankind shine forth. Hasten to finish the dwelling place of the Lord, so that the Spirit of God may come to dwell in the midst of his people, sanctified and established according to his law. The eternal quest. Most Freemasons, as well as modern students of Masonic ideals, are largely unaware of the cosmic obligations they undertake from the moment they begin to investigate the sacred truths of nature, as recorded in ancient and modern rituals. But if they view their tasks so superficially, lacking years of experience, they will end up considering Freemasonry merely a social organization of only a few years' age. They must therefore realize that the ancient mystical teachings, perpetuated through modern rites, are sacred, and that there are invisible and unknown powers shaping the destinies of those who consciously and of their own volition take upon themselves the obligations of the fraternity. Freemasonry is not a material thing. It is a science of the soul. It is not a creed or a doctrine, but a universal expression of transcendent wisdom. The term is used here as a synonym for a most secret and sacred philosophy that has always existed and was the inspiration of the great mystics and sages of all ages. The perfect wisdom of God revealed through a secret hierarchy of enlightened intelligences. The subsequent joint action of the medieval guilds, or even the construction of Solomon's temple as it is understood today, has little, if anything, to do with the true origin of Freemasonry, since it does not depend on personalities. In its highest sense, it is neither history nor archaeology, but a transcendent symbolic language that perpetuates through certain concrete symbols the sacred mysteries of the ancients. Only those who see it as a cosmic study, a life's work, a divine inspiration to think better, feel better, and live better, with the purpose of obtaining spiritual light and considering the daily life of the true Mason as a means to achieve it, have only achieved a superficial inner vision of the true mysteries of the ancient rites. The antiquity of the Masonic essence cannot be measured in centuries or millennia, because its origin is truly limited to the world of forms. The world, as we see it, is merely an experimental laboratory in which humankind strives to build and express ever greater and more perfect means. Within this laboratory filter, myriad rays descending from other cosmic hierarchies, the group of superior intelligences that govern the creative process of the cosmos. These enormous globes and orbs, which concentrate their energies upon humanity and shape its destinies, do so within the highest order, each in its own way, and according to its own principles. The Masonic building can constitute the nucleus of action in which these hierarchies can manifest themselves, since a true lodge is the minimized embodiment of the universe, not only materially but also symbolically, and of its work always dedicated to the glory of its great architect. Free from the limitations of creed and sect, the Mason must stand as master of all faith. Anyone who undertakes the study of Freemasonry without realizing the depth, beauty, and spiritual power of its philosophy will never be able to derive anything lasting from their studies. The antiquity of the esoteric schools can be traced by the student far back, to the dawn of time, to ages and periods dating from when the temple of the solar man was just beginning to rise. That was the first temple of the king, within which the true mysteries of the ancient abode were given and preserved, and it was the gods of creation and the spirit of the dawn who first roofed the master's lodge. The initiated brother discovers that their so-called symbols and rituals are mere formulas crafted by wisdom to perpetuate ideas incomprehensible to the average person. He also realizes that only a few Freemasons today know or appreciate the mystical meaning contained within the rituals. With religious faith, we may perpetuate the form, worshipping it instead of life, but those who have not recognized the truth in the rigidity of the ritual, who have not been able to discern the essence through its wrapping in well-rhymed words, are not Freemasons, despite their ostensible degrees and outward honors. In the work we are undertaking, we do not intend to address the modern concept of the order, but rather to consider Freemasonry as it truly is for those who intuit it, a great cosmic organism, whose true members and children are bound not by verbal promises, but by experiences so real that they enable them to grasp beyond, and work at levels so subtle that materialism cannot even imagine them. When this opening occurs, and the mysteries of the universe unfold before the aspiring candidate, only then is the true nature of Freemasonry revealed. Its secondary aspects no longer interest them, because they have penetrated the school of mystery, which they are only able to recognize when they themselves, spiritually, become an integral part of it. All who have examined and studied ancient wisdom have no doubt that Freemasonry, like the universe itself, being the greatest of schools, deals with the revelation of a threefold principle, because the entire universe is governed by the same three powers, who are commonly called the builders of the Masonic temple. These are not personalities, but principles, supremely intelligent energies, and forces that, in God, humanity, and the universe, bear the responsibility of shaping the cosmic substance within the dwelling place of the living king, that the temple built in the early ages through the unconscious and later conscious efforts of each individual who expresses in their life the creative principles of these three powers. The true member of the ancient guild understood that the structure of the temple he was engaged in erecting to the king of the universe was a duty, or rather, a privilege he owed to his God, his brother, and himself. He realized that certain steps had to be taken, and that his temple had to be built according to a plan. Today, however, it seems that this plan has been lost, for in most cases, Freemasonry is no longer a working art, but merely a speculative idea, until each brother, upon reading the mysteries of its symbolism and perceiving the beautiful allegories hidden in its ritual, comes to realize that only he himself possesses within himself the keys and the plans so long lost to his guild, and that if he intends to learn what the true art of symbolic construction is, he will only achieve it by using the essential elements of his own being with purity. True Freemasonry is esoteric. It is not of this world. All that we have here is merely a link, a means of manifestation, an introduction through which the student can pass into the unknown. Freemasonry has little to do with material things, except to verify that form is shaped by life, and to manifest what life contains. Consequently, the student strives to shape his life so that form glorifies the divinity whose temple he is slowly raising as he awakens, one by one, the values within himself, and directs them to consciously work on the plan that destiny has laid out for him. As far as can be ascertained, ancient Freemasonry and the beautiful cosmic allegories it teaches, perpetuated through hundreds of lodges and ancient mysteries, constitute the oldest of the initiatory mystery schools. This is a term used since antiquity to designate the esoteric aspect of religious ceremonies. By passing through these mysteries or trials, the candidate was initiated into the mysteries of nature and the arcane aspect of natural law, and its survival through the ages has not depended on itself, as an exoteric organism of partially evolved individuals, but on the hidden brotherhood, the esoteric side of Freemasonry. All the great mystery schools have hierarchies according to the spiritual planes of nature, which express themselves in this world through creeds and organizations. When the true student strives to rise independently from the exoteric body into the spiritual realm, while simultaneously seeking to join the esoteric group, which, though lacking a physical building or lodge on the physical plane of nature, is far greater than all lodges combined, becoming for them the central fire, the spiritual instructors of humanity must work in a concrete world, with motives comprehensible to human intelligence. It is in this way that humankind begins to understand the meaning of the allegories and symbols surrounding its exoteric task, as soon as it is ready to receive them. The true Mason realizes that the work carried out in the world by the mystery schools is inclusive rather than exclusive, and that the only lodge broad enough to express its ideals is one whose dome is the heavens, whose columns are the limits of creation, whose gridded floor is composed of the intersecting currents of human emotions, and whose altar resides in the human heart. Creeds cannot bind the true seeker of truth. Upon realizing the unity of truth, the Mason also discovers that the hierarchies with which he collaborates have transmitted to him, in varying degrees, the mystical spiritual rituals of all the schools of the past, and that if he risks assuming a position within the plan, he should not enter this sacred study with a view to what he might gain from it, but rather to how he can contribute to the expansion of this transcendental endeavor. Within Freemasonry lies hidden the mystery of evolution, as well as the solution to the problem of existence, and the path the student must follow to consciously unite with that which truly constitutes the latent powers behind national and international processes. The true student realizes, above all, that the attainment of degrees does not make a man a Mason. A Mason is not the product of an appointment, he is an evolved being, and he must understand that his position in the exoteric lodge means nothing compared to his place in the spiritual lodge of existence. He must forever discard the notion that he can be instructed in the sacred mysteries, or that they can be communicated to him orally, or that membership in an organization is sufficient to improve him in every respect. You must understand that your duty is to build and develop the transcendent teachings within your own being, that nothing, except your own purified self, can open the door to the impenetrable mysteries of human consciousness, and that your Masonic rites must remain eternally speculative until you put them into practice, living the life of the mystic Mason. Your karmic responsibilities increase with your opportunities. Those who are surrounded by wisdom and opportunity to progress themselves and do not take advantage of such opportunities are lazy workers who, spiritually, if not physically, will be cast out of the Lord's temple. The Masonic order is not merely a social organization, but is composed of all those who have committed themselves and their brethren to learn and practice together the principles of mysticism and occult rites, no less eternal for being ancient. They are, or should be, philosophers, sages, individuals of balanced mind, dedicated to Freemasonry and committed to what they love most, working to make the world a better, wiser, and happier place, because they have lived it. Those who grasp the value of these rights and pass among the columns seeking prestige or material advantages are blasphemers. And although in this world we may consider them successful, in reality, their qualitative failures have closed the doors of the true right to them, whose key is selflessness and whose practitioners have renounced the tangible goods of the moment. In times past, many years of preparation were required for a neophyte to gain the opportunity to enter the temple of the mysteries. Thus, the frivolous, the curious, the weak-hearted, and those unable to resist life's temptations were automatically eliminated for their inability to meet the admission requirements. The triumphant candidate, passing between the columns, entered the temple fully aware of his sublime opportunity, his transcendent obligation, and the mystical privilege he had earned through years of arduous preparation. Only those who enter the temple reverently are truly Freemasons. Those who seek neither fleeting praise nor worldly possessions, but eternal treasures, and whose sole desire is to know the true mystery of the order, where they may join as honest workers with those who will live as builders of the universal temple in the future. The Masonic ritual is not a ceremony, but a way of life. Only those who, having dedicated their lives and fortunes to the altar of the eternal flame, undertake the construction of a universal edifice of which they are conscious, and whose God is the living architect, are truly Freemasons. When we have such Freemasons, the order will once again be operative, the flaming triangle will shine with redoubled splendor, the deceased maker will rise from his tomb, and the lost word, so long hidden from the uninitiated, will be revealed again, with the power that renews all things. In the following pages, you will find a number of thoughts for the study and meditation of the brethren, the builders of their inner temple. These are key insights that, if merely read and not explored in depth, will leave the student still in a state of ignorance, but which, if lived, will transform the predominantly speculative Freemasonry of today into the operative Freemasonry of tomorrow, in which each Mason, recognizing his own position, will see things he never saw before, not because they were not present, but because he was the one who was blind. And there is none so blind as he who will not see. Thinking. The noblest tool of the Mason is his mind, and his worth is measured by how he uses it. Attentive to all things, the candidate who aspires to transcendent wisdom arrives at reality through sincere desire, meditation, and silence. Let the tone of the order and the ritual be written in dazzling characters. Think of me. What is the meaning of this mystical labyrinth of symbols, rites, and rituals? Think. What does life mean with its intertwining of human kinship, with the infinite splendor of qualities disguised as if for a carnival of fools? Think. What is the plan behind all this, and who is the planner? Where does the great architect dwell, and what is the board on which he draws? Think. What is the human soul, and why the endless yearning for unknown goals, along paths where it must wander alone? Why do mind, soul, and spirit exist, and what is the purpose of existence itself? Think. Is there an answer? If so, where can we find the truth? Think, brothers of the order, think deeply, for if truth exists, then you possess it, and if truth is within the reach of every living creature, what more worthy goal is there to strive for? The candidate. There is a period in the development of every living individual when the being realizes, with nascent consciousness, that it is a prisoner. Although seemingly free to move and develop its personality, fleeting life recognizes, through ever-increasing means, its own limitations. It is at this moment that humankind cries out more insistently than ever for liberation from the oppressive bonds that, even though invisible to mortal eyes, continue to chain it with servitudes far worse than those of any physical prison. Many have undoubtedly read the tale of the prisoner of Chillon, who paced up and down within the narrow confines of his cell, while the blue waters churned ceaselessly above his head, the only sound breaking the silence of his eternal night being the constant splashing of the leaks. We pity the prisoner in his physical prison, and we grieve to the depths of our hearts, for we know how ardently life loves freedom. But there is a prisoner whose punishment is far worse than earthly ones. He does not even have the narrow confines of a cell around him, for he cannot, at least, pace incessantly up and down and weave furrows upon the pebbles of his filthy floor. That eternal prisoner is life itself, incarnate within the somber, stony walls of matter, without a single ray illuminating the darkness of his destiny. He eternally struggles within the black realms of gloomy walls, pleading for light and a chance at inspiration. This is the eternal prisoner who, through the infinite stages of cosmic development, through countless forms and unknown species, eternally strives to liberate himself and conquer the freedom to express himself, a natural right that every creature possesses. He always awaits the day when, rising above the rocks that for now seal his formless tomb, he can raise his arms to the sky, plunge into the celestial radiance of spiritual freedom, be free to join the bubbling atoms and dance joyfully after breaking the chains of his prison and his tomb. Around life, that wondrous seed in the heart of every creature, that sacred prisoner in his gloomy cell, that master builder lying in the tomb of matter, has arisen the marvelous legend of the Holy Sepulchre. Under countless allegories, the mystical philosophers of all ages have perpetuated that transcendent tale, which, for the Guild of Freemasons, consists of the mystical ritual of Hiram, the master builder, killed in his temple by the very workers who assisted him, while he was busy creating the dwelling place of his god. The tomb is matter. Matter is the lethal wall of substance, not yet awakened by the latent energies of the spirit. It exists in many forms and degrees, not only in the chemical elements that give solidity to our universe, but also in better and more subtle essences. These, although expressing themselves through emotion and thought, remain beings belonging to the world of form, even within their subtlety. Such substances, or essences, constitute the great cross of matter, which opposes the growth of all things, even as, by opposition, it makes such growth possible. It is the great cross of hydrogen, nitrogen, oxygen, and carbon, upon which even the vital germ of protoplasm is crucified and sacrificed, agonizing. Such substances are incapable of giving it adequate expression. The spirit enclosed within them cries out for freedom, freedom to be, to express, to manifest its true place in the grand plan of cosmic evolution. The deepest longings within the human heart gently draw it toward the temple gates. It is the growing urgency for greater understanding and more light that, by the law of necessity, gives life to the great cosmic lodge, dedicated to those who, seeking to merge with the powers of light, wish the walls of their prison to be torn down. This shell cannot be discarded, it must be brought into contact, in solidarity, with life. Every crystallized, lifeless atom of the human body must be set in vibration and motion until it attains the highest degree of consciousness. Through purification, through knowledge, and through service to fellow members, the candidate consistently develops these mystical properties and builds better and more perfect bodies, through which their highest life achieves still greater manifestations. Man's expression, through constructive thought, emotion, and action, liberates the highest part of his nature from bodies that, because of their state of crystallization, are unable to provide him with his natural opportunities. In Freemasonry, this abiding presence in matter is called the tomb, and it represents the holy sepulchre of mystical legend. It is the tomb within which lies the lost architect, and with him, the the plans of the temple and the word of the Master. And it is this architect, our Grand Master, whom we must seek and rescue from death. This noble Son of Light calls out within us in every expression of matter. Everything points to his resting place, and the acacia sprig announces that through the long winter of spiritual darkness, when the sun no longer shines for humankind, this light still awaits the day of its liberation, when each of us will rise to him through the grasp or handshake of the Grand Master, the true grasp of a true Master Mason. We cannot certainly hear that voice that cries out eternally, but we can feel its inner call. Something great and unknown stirs the fibers of our hearts. As time goes on, a great desire intensifies within the Master to live better and to cultivate thoughts worthy of greatness, molding within himself the characteristics of the candidate who, when asked why he embarks on such a path, can truly answer, if he can mentally interpret what he feels. I hear a voice calling to me in the flora and fauna, from the stones, from the clouds, from the sky itself. Every fiery atom that spins and vibrates in the cosmos cries out to me with the voice of my Master. I can hear Hiram Abiff, my great Master, crying out in his agony, the agony of life shrouded in darkness within the walls of his material prison, trying to find the expression I had denied him, striving to hasten the day of his spirit's liberation, for whose confinement I alone am responsible. My material world and its primal reactions were the perpetrators of my unredeemed soul. There are many legends about the Holy Sepulchre, which for so many centuries has been in the hands of infidels, and which, due to its misinterpretation, the Christian world tried to recapture during the Crusades. However, few Freemasons still realize that this Holy Sepulchre, or tomb, is, in reality, negation and crystallization, closed and sealed matter, in which the spirit of life is contained, remaining in darkness, until the progress of each individual being grants it walls of resplendent gold, and transmutes its stony walls into vibrant light. As we develop our means of expression more and more effectively, these walls will slowly expand until, at last, the spirit emerges triumphant from its tomb, and, after blessing the tremendous walls that enclosed it, rises above them to unite with itself at levels no less dense, but all the more effective and real. Let us first consider the tragedy of the legend of Hiram. I will mention 3 villains who, as the architect was attempting to leave his temple, beat him with his own tools until he was exhausted, then brought the temple crashing down upon their own heads. These 3 villains symbolize the expressions of our lower nature, expressions that are the true opponents of all the good within us. These 3 evildoers can be called ignorance, fanaticism, and ambition, which, after arduous work, are transmuted into wisdom, tolerance, and love, becoming glorious channels through which the great vital power of the 3 regents, the dazzling builders of the Universal Lodge, will manifest itself. These regents appear in this world as spiritual thought, constructive emotion, and useful daily work, in the various forms and places we use to carry out the work of the Masters. These 3 elements constitute the flaming triangle to which every Mason pays homage, but perverted and crystallized, still subject to primal instinct. They constitute a triangular prison to which the light cannot reach, and where life languishes in the darkness of ignorance, until man himself, through the highest of his understanding, manages to set free the power and energies that, indeed, are the solidity and glory of the being who gave us the light. Now, let us analyze how those 3 resplendent kings of the dawn became, thanks to the perversion and interpretation that man makes of their manifestations, the criminals who murdered Hiram, the dynamic powers of the cosmos that circulate through the veins of every living being, trying to beautify and perfect the temple, which they would build according to the plan abandoned in the workroom by the great architect of the universe. First, we have one of the three kings, or rather, we should say, a channel through which it manifests. For King Solomon is the power of the mind which, when corrupted, becomes a destroyer that undoes the powers that nourish and build. The correct application of thought, when it seeks answers to the cosmic problem of destiny, liberates the human spirit, which rises above the concrete through the marvelous power of intelligence, with its dreams and ideals. When human thought stirs the wings of inspiration, when it destroys the darkness of ignorance with the force of reason and logic, then indeed the whole being is freed from its misery and flooded with light, bathing in the waters of power and life. This light allows us to investigate the mystery of creation with greater clarity and to find, with the greatest certainty, our place in the grand plan, for as humanity develops its bodies, it acquires greater talents with which it is possible to explore the mysteries of nature and delve into the search for the hidden works of divinity. The builder is liberated through such powers, and its consciousness continues onward, from conquest to conquest. These high ideals, these spiritual concepts, these altruistic, philanthropic, and educational applications of the power of thought glorify the builder. For they provide the power to express oneself, whether in thought, in words, or in action, and whoever can express themselves is, from that moment on, free. When man can shape his thoughts, his emotions, and his highest ideals, then he is freedom, because ignorance represents the darkness of chaos, while knowledge is the light of the cosmos. Although many of us live, seemingly, to satisfy the body's primal desires as servants of nature's basest instincts, a latent and enduring power, an unknown truth, always remains within each of us. This power lives in this state, perhaps for eternity, but during our growth it often emerges, with a great yearning for manifestation, when we discover that the satisfaction of sensual pleasure is eternally fleeting, ephemeral, and unsatisfying, and we examine ourselves, beginning to realize that greater incentives exist for our being. Sometimes it is reason, sometimes suffering, sometimes a profound desire to be useful, that causes these latent powers to manifest, revealing that a great dream amidst the shadows is about to embark on the path of light. Having lived through all experiences, man learns to realize that all manifestations of being, all those varied experiences through which he passes, are steps leading in a single direction. Consciously or unconsciously, all souls are directed toward the portico of the temple where, for the first time, they see and witness the glory of divinity. It is then that the glorious allegory of the martyred builder is understood, and the power within oneself is felt, crying out against the prison of matter. Nothing else matters from then on. And without regard for price or sacrifice, and even suffering the scorn of the world, the candidate slowly ascends the steps of the eternal temple. He knows the reason that governs the cosmos. He does not know the laws that shape his being, but he knows that somewhere, behind the veil of human ignorance, there is an eternal light toward which we must approach, step by step. With eyes fixed on the heavens above, and hands joined in prayer, he slowly ascends the steps as a candidate. Fearful, still trembling from the divine confirmation of what is good, he knocks on the door and waits, in silence, for the answer that will come from within. The entered apprentice. There are 3 great steps in the evolution of the human soul before it reaches the final abode of its spirit. These steps have been called, respectively, youth, maturity, and old age, or, as a Mason might say, the times of apprentice, fellow craft, and master builder. All life passes through these three stages of human consciousness. They may also be considered as the outer man looking inward, going inward, and being inward or within. The path of human life, like all things, is governed by the laws of analogy, and just as, starting from birth, we begin our pilgrimage through youth, maturity, and old age, so too does the spiritual consciousness of man, in his cosmic evolution, pass from unconsciousness to perfect consciousness within the grand lodge of the universe. Before initiation into the apprentice degree can be properly understood and appreciated, certain requirements must be considered, not merely those related to the material world, but also to the spiritual. The Mason must realize that true initiation is a spiritual, not a material, rite, and that his initiation into the living temple of the spiritual hierarchy that governs Freemasonry may not occur until years after he receives his material degree, or that spiritually, he may very well be a Grand Master before he is even born. There are probably few examples in the history of Freemasonry where the spiritual ordination of the aspirant occurs at the same time as his material initiation, because true initiation depends on the cultivation of certain qualities of the soul, an individual and personal matter left entirely to the will of the mystical Mason, which he must keep silent and alone. The tabernacle precinct among the ancient Jews was divided into three parts: the outer precinct, the holy place, and the Holy of Holies. These three divisions, they represent the three great divisions of human consciousness. The apprentice degree is acquired when the student expresses their intention to work the rough clay they extract from the quarry and prepare for the fellow craft guild. In other words, the first degree is truly preparatory. It is a material step related to material things, because spiritual life must rest on material foundations. 7 is the number of the apprentice, because it refers to the 7 liberal arts and sciences, and these are the powers with which the apprentice must work before deserving the distinction of advancing to higher degrees. There are many who mistakenly believe they can reach the spiritual planes of nature without first passing through those, and without shaping matter, transforming it into an expression of spiritual power. For the first degree, the advancement of mastery consists in mastering the concrete conditions of life and developing the sensory centers, which must then become channels for expressing the truths of the spirit. All progress is a gradual process carried out in an orderly fashion, just as it should be practiced in a lodge engaged in conscious work. The universe is divided into planes, and these planes are further divided by a certain number of vibrations that permeate them. Spiritual consciousness evolves gradually, slowly, though in constant progression, and its lower states lose all connection with the higher ones when it has reached a level of transcendence in which only Grand Masters may confer. This state of superconsciousness, a realm unknown even to the Master Mason, eventually returns to its own particular spiritual hierarchy. Action is the watchword of a lodge apprentice. All advancement is the result of its practice and application to increase his wages. The human body is strengthened through muscular exercises. Through the 7 liberal arts and sciences, the human mind receives a certain impetus, which in turn stimulates certain inner centers of consciousness. These centers of consciousness, through further development, will later give broader expression to those inner powers, but the apprentice's first duty is to awaken such powers, and like the youth of which he is a symbol, his ideals and work must be strictly confined to the concrete. For him, the compass lies beneath the square. For him, the reasons that manifest through the heart and the mind, the 2 poles of expression, are obscured and hidden beneath the square used to measure the density of matter. Although he does not know why, His work consists of following the directives of those wiser than himself. But, as a result of the application of energy, through actions and reactions, he slowly builds and develops the powers of discrimination and the vigor of character that characterize the fellow craft degree. It is obvious that the rough clay symbolizes the body. It also represents the cosmic, substantial root that is extracted from the quarry of the universe by the first expressions of intelligence, and that is molded by them into ever firmer and more perfect lines until, finally, it becomes the perfect stone of the builder's temple. How can emotion be authentically expressed through form? How can the mind manifest itself until the painstakingly evolved cells of the brain, made of matter, attain their organic quality to form the working field upon which all other things can be based? All scholars of human matter realize that every expression of man depends on organic quality, that in each living thing this quality is different, and that the increasing perfection of this matter is a sure indication of mental, physical, or spiritual advancement. Thanks to the rules of the craft, the apprentice must beautify his temple. He must cultivate within himself, through his thoughts, his actions, the power of his hands, and the tools he has been given, certain qualities that make possible his admission to the highest degrees of the spiritual lodge. We know that the inanimate rectangular block is a symbol of the tomb. It is also well known that the apprentice is incapable of moving the stone or transforming it into something higher or greater, but it is his privilege to purify and glorify that matter and begin the great task of preparing it for a higher purpose. Few realize that, since the universe is made up of individuals in various states of evolution, responsibility is, consequently, individual, and that each of the things that man wishes to obtain, he himself must create and maintain. If the individual is to employ its best bodies for the purpose it has set for itself, it must treat them accordingly, and therefore those bodies must be good and loyal servants of the great task for which the individual is preparing. The quarry symbolizes the boundless power of nature. It represents virtually the infinite field of human opportunity. It symbolizes the cosmic substances from which humankind must choose the stones for its temple. At this stage of his evolution, the apprentice obtains the privilege of choosing the stones he wishes to polish during his progress in the lodge. For at this time, he represents youth choosing its own task. He represents the human ego that, at the dawn of time, selected many blocks, cubes, and cracked stones from the great quarry. These rough, broken stones that fit nothing together are the partially evolved and malleable powers with which he works. In the first period, he must choose the materials. Those who did not choose them will never be able to polish them. During the involuntary stage of human consciousness, the apprentice was the human being who had to work with those rough blocks, searching for the tools and the power sufficient to polish them. As he evolves through time, he acquires the tools and cosmically advances to the level of companion, where he works his clay according to plans drawn up for a specific purpose. From that rough, formless clay, he obtains only 3 dimensions, which represent the 3 villains of the legend who, at that stage, become the destroyers of the 4th-dimensional life, hidden within the ugly, poorly molded stone. The apprentice's final key is service. He cannot ask why, he does not know how. His obligation is to do, to act, to express himself in some way, constructively if possible, but even unsuccessfully, and even in a negative sense, if necessary, anything is preferable to doing nothing. Without action, his great task is lost. Without tools, symbolized by the body, he cannot act in any organized way. Consequently, it is necessary to master the arts and sciences that place in his hands intelligent tools for expressing energy. Beauty must be the dominant note of his ideal. With his concrete ideals, he must always strive to beautify everything that comes into contact with him, and of which he is a part, so that the work of his hand may be acceptable in the eyes of his ideal of perfection, the great architect of the universe. His daily life, at home, in the office, in society, along with the integration of the fundamental unity of each individual with the whole, forms the foundation upon which the aspiring candidate can build a greater structure. Indeed, he must live life, the result of which is the purification of his body, so that the subtlest forces of the highest degrees can be expressed through the most exquisite sensitivity of the receptive pole within himself. When he reaches this degree of subtlety, he can be considered spiritually capable of advancing to higher levels. Such advancement is not the result of selection or choice, but an automatic process of evolution, in which, having sensitized his consciousness through the correctness of his life, he aligns himself with higher planes of expression. All initiation is the result of adjustments between evolutionary life and the physical, emotional, and mental planes of consciousness through which the soul passes. Gates of the temple of wisdom, bound by the cable tow of limitation, poor in spirit and body, man seeks admission to the university of knowledge. In the ancient mysteries, the order of steps was 7, 5, and 3, the 7 liberal arts and sciences, the 5 senses and emotions, and the 3 symbolic steps of the Trinity of God in man. Now we can consider the spiritual requirements of one who feels mystically drawn to the great spiritual brotherhood, which, hidden behind an esoteric rite, constitutes the living power of a lodge of apprentices. 1. It is essential that the apprentice has sufficiently studied anatomical topics to have at least a general understanding of the physical body, since the entire degree is based on the mystery of form. The human body is the highest manifestation of form that he is capable of analyzing. Consequently, he must dedicate himself to the study of his own being and its mysteries and complexities. 2. The apprentice must realize that his body is a living temple in which divinity dwells, and treat it accordingly, for when he abuses or mistreats it, he breaks the sacred obligations he must assume before he can hope to understand the true mysteries of the order. The breaking of this pact with the highest life that unfolds within him inevitably provokes nature's sanction for disrupting a balance that he can no longer ignore. 3. You must study the problem of sustaining the body through food, clothing, breathing, and other necessities, because all of these are important steps in a learning process. Those who eat without moderation, dress improperly, and use only a third of their lung capacity can never attain the physical efficiency necessary for the full expression of the active life to which they aspire. 4. It must grow physically, and in the expression of concrete things. Human relations must then be idealized, and it must seek the development of qualities of modesty that are necessary for the harmonious work of the Mason and his companions on the material plane of nature. 5. He must strive to abolish all inequalities. He can best do this by balancing his physical and mental bodies, by dedicating himself to the study of the 7 liberal arts and sciences. Until he has relatively mastered these principles on the highest plane within his own being, he cannot expect to attain, spiritually, through the qualities of his own character, the vitalizing rays of the fellow craft. When he reaches this point, he can spiritually expect to be a member of a higher degree, since in fact only then will he be. The Mason must realize that his innermost aspirations are the index of his true self. Those who enjoy social and financial standing or a prominent place in business and make them a culmination of their egotism or ostentation within the order are wasting their time and, in essence, have never truly belong to it. Their affiliation will do little harm to Freemasonry, since they will grasp none of its values. Huddled in their temples, they will be nothing more than bored spectators of a performance they will never understand, because they lack the soul invested in it, and the spirit capable of receiving its subtle benefit. Badges on watches or lapels do not make Freemasons, nor does the observance of a ritual. Freemasons must evolve through the effort of their own conscience toward higher ideals embodied within themselves. Their lives are the sole badge of their rank, greater than any visible and tangible credentials. Bearing this in mind, it is possible for a selfless and diligent soul to manifest itself spiritually and freely in the consciousness of an apprentice. This signifies that they have taken the greatest step on the path of their personal liberation. Now, their symbol is that of a smiling child, because with the simplicity of a child they place themselves under the protection of a spiritual mentor, eager and joyful to obey its guidance. Having reached this point and having done their best within the depths of their consciousness, they are in a position for the supreme powers, by the law of reciprocity and acting in their mysterious way, to ultimately find them fit to receive the second degree of spiritual liberation. The fellow craft. Life manifests itself not only through action on the physical plane, but also through the emotions and feelings in the mind of each being. This is the kind of impetus that students receive when they begin their work in the order. They thus pass from youth, with its smiling face, to the greater responsibilities befitting a fully grown man. On the second step of the temple stands a warrior in shining armor, his sword sheathed, a book in his hand. He symbolizes strength, the energy of Mars, and the marvelous degree of spiritual development known as the companion. Through each of us flow fiery rays of human emotion. Behind every expression of human energy, a powerful force boils, like prancing, rearing steeds about to bolt, like hounds eager for the hunt. Emotional powers cannot always be repressed, but break through the walls that restrain them and surge forward as ardent expressions of human energy. We already know that the great principle of emotion was Hiram's second destroyer. The primary aspect of human emotion manifests in the world as an unspeakable malaise, which through various reactions is expressed in material and mental organisms. It is strange to observe the extent to which certain divine powers can be perverted, to the point where every expression and instinct, in its negative manifestation, becomes death and destruction. The power of the God's divine compassion manifests itself in this world very differently than it does in the realm of light. Divine compassion is, however, strengthened by influences as potent as the passions of mortals and the ambitions of the earth. The rays of the spiritual light of the cosmos, the fiery, the principles of dawn boil and rise within unregenerated humanity. These impulses, lacking positive direction, pervert it, rendering it unruly and violent. The infinite power of chaos, the ardent swirling spirals of perpetual motion, whose majestic cadences constitute the music of the spheres, are stirred by the same great power that humanity uses to destroy the highest and best. The same mystical power that keeps the planets in their orbits around the sun, the same energy that maintains each electron in continuous motion, the same energy that built the temple of God, transforms it, in its primitive manifestation, into a relentless enslaved leader, who, without restraint or control, strikes down the pious one within, and hurls him, staggering, into the darkness of his prison. Humanity does not hear that subtle voice that speaks to it in a tone always loving, always sorrowful. That voice speaks to him of the peace that accompanies every constructive use of energy, which he must master if he intends to be lord of the powers of creation, his own master, ultimately. How long did King Hiram of Tyre, the warrior of the symbolic second rank of the Companions of the Cosmic Lodge, have to teach humanity his lessons of self-mastery. The master can act only if he continually overcomes the miseries resulting from uncontrolled appetites. Man did not receive his strength to use it destructively, but so that he could build a temple capable of being the dwelling place of the great architect of the universe. God glorifies himself through those individualized portions of himself that are humankind, and he gradually teaches those portions to understand and glorify the entire cosmos of which they are a part. The day has come for the fellows to acquire and apply their knowledge. The lost key to their degree is the mastery of emotion, which places the manifested energy of the universe at their disposal, and only for good. A person can expect to be considered a great power when they demonstrate their ability to use it constructively and altruistically. When the master understands that the warrior's key on the wall signifies the proper use of the fire of human potential, they will have unraveled the mystery of their guild. They possess, potentially, the devastating energies of a Lucifer, but before they may advance, they must prove their ability to apply such energy. They must follow in the footsteps of their predecessor, Tubal-Cain, who, with the efficiency and strength of a war god, melted his sword and forged it into a plowshare. Anyone who wishes to progress in the development of their own being must exercise unceasing vigilance over their thoughts, desires, and actions. The fellow craft degree is the degree of transfiguration. The hand capable of killing must now lift up the fallen, while the lips that curse must now utter prayer. The heart filled with hatred must learn the mystery of compassion, as a result of a deeper and more perfect understanding of man's relationship with his fellow man and his Creator. The firm and benevolent hand of the Spirit must subdue the fiery powers of passion with an iron fist. In the application and realization of these principles lies the key to the fellow craft mason. In this degree, the 2 points of the compass, one at a higher level than the other, symbolize the heart and intelligence, and since the point of the compass corresponding to the heart expresses higher emotions, it is freed from the square, symbol of the material that initially subjugates it. Many people in the world are now spiritually passing through the fellow craft degree in their 5 senses. The sense of perception falls under the control of emotional energies, therefore. To constructively express the power of the fellow craft, the development of the senses is necessary. One must realize that all the powers that many years of need have won for them have come together so that, through them, they can more fully liberate the spirit within their own being. As the fellow craft degree is in the middle of the 3, it is a spiritual duty to attain this point of equilibrium or counterweight, which always provides security between the 2 extremes. Also, in this degree, one must find mastery of expression. The password of the fellow craft can be, in short, defined as compassion, balance, and transformation. In the fellow craft degree lies hidden the creative force of human life. The fellow craft is the one who works with elemental fire, transforming it into spiritual light. The heart is the center of their activity. It is in this degree that the human side of nature, with its constructive emotions, must be externalized and brought to the forefront. But all these expressions of the human heart must be transformed into serene compassion, despite the sufferings of the moment, and contemplate humanity in its positive aspect. When the candidate feels he has reached a point where he can manifest all his ardor and energy constructively and in a balanced way, and has freed his spirit from the prison of matter, then he can consider that the degree of Master Mason is not far from him, and consequently can serenely await the day when he will receive the spiritual endorsement of a higher and more deserved degree. He is now capable of knowing himself and realizing that it is not possible to receive an advancement within the spiritual lodge until the heart is in harmony with a spiritual influence emanating from the causal planes of consciousness. Before a student can spiritually claim to be a true member of the ancient and accepted degree of fellow craft Freemasons, the following requirements must be met. 1. Mastery over all kinds of violent emotions, composure in troublesome situations, kindness in the face of evil, and humility with his or her associated powers. These qualities demonstrate that the applicant has the right to be considered a perfect fellow craft Mason. 2. Mastery of animal energies, restraint of passion
Las
and
emociones
desire,
elevadas son la llave
control
del
over the
alma.
lower.
Declara,
Nature.
elijo sentir gozo
All
sin
of the
causa.
above reveals loyal
Visualiza una
intentions on the
expansión
part
en
of the
tu pecho.
student to be considered
El
in the
alma vibra
fullness
más
of his
alto cuando
degree.
sueltas el control.
3.
Las emociones
Understanding and
elevadas son la
mastery of the
llave del alma.
creative forces,
Declara,
dedicating them to
elijo
the
sentir gozo
development
sin causa.
of the spiritual nature,
Visualiza una
as well as a
expansión en tu
proper
pecho.
understanding of their
El alma
physical
vibra más
use.
alto cuando sueltas
These
el
are other
control.
necessary steps
Las
to reach the
emociones
place where
elevadas
the
son la llave
student
del alma.
intends to be.
Las emociones elevadas
4.
son la llave del
The
alma.
transformation of personal
Declara,
affection
elijo
into
sentir gozo
impersonal
sin causa.
compassion demonstrates
Visualiza
that
una expansión en
the
tu
fellow
pecho.
craft Mason truly
El alma vibra más
understands his
alto cuando
duties
sueltas el
and
control.
lives in accordance with the value his order suggests. Those who focus on personalism do not, in reality, live the characteristics of the second degree, because having moved up one point of the compass in their degree's emblem implies that all personal actions must be governed by altruistic principles. 5. At this point, the candidate devotes his 5 senses to the study of human problems, with the development of the sensory centers as his motive, because he realizes that the 5 senses are so many keys, whose proper application will give him material for a spiritual transmutation, if he applies to them the common divisor of analogy. The apprentice degree can be considered a materialistic degree, the fellow craft degree is religious and mystical, while the mastercraft degree is esoteric or philosophical. Each is a degree in the development of the connection between life and intelligence, and is revealed by a fuller expression of the master's gradual liberation from the triangular oppression, constituted by the threefold negation that marks the first stage of his individualization. The Master Mason. Hidden within this image is the allegory of the lost word. The Master Mason, having completed his work, becomes a worker on a higher plane than that permitted to the ordinary builder. The Master Mason becomes the cornerstone of the universal temple,